Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and for Book Trek 2022 today, we're talking about My Enemy, My Ally by Duane. So this book was originally published in 1984, and it is the first book that really tries to explore, at least the first, I believe, traditionally published Star Trek book. There might have been others earlier that does try to explore in some way Romulan culture. And one of the first things that really drive home is that humans call them Romulans. They do not call themselves that. It wouldn't make sense that they would name their species after Greek myths. I'm sorry, not Greek myths, Roman myths. Sorry. And they call themselves Rihansu. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. So this was retroactively basically considered number one in the Rihansu series. The second book in that series is this one, The Romulan Way, co-written by Duane, I believe published in 1987. And from what I understand, these are the only two that really are worth reading. They wasn't considered a series until they were republished with slightly different covers and numbered, and like around 2000, and that's when they considered this number one. But getting back to this, like I said, it does involve the Romulans. So there was an episode in the original series in which Spock infiltrates, essentially, by convincing a Romulan commander, a female Romulan commander, that he is going to be romantically attached to her and that he is defecting from the Federation, joining the Romulans, betraying Kirk, and of course the whole thing is a ruse in order to steal Romulan cloaking device technology. And it's actually a great episode. It's in season 3. Season 3 overall is not a good season, but I actually really liked that episode. And they follow that up. So that Romulan commander, we find out in this book, did end up basically becoming almost banished. I mean, her reputation was completely lost. She lost all prestige, lost rank, and this deals instead with her aunt. In this iteration of the Romulans, they are heavily bound by honor. Although, considering the way most of the Romulans act in this, you wouldn't necessarily believe that. But she is a warrior. She's a commander, a military commander, and of course she has a bone to pick with Kirk because of what happened with her niece. But above all, she cares about honor, and she has found out that the Romulan Empire is doing something that she considers highly dishonorable, and essentially they are kidnapping Vulcans, and then they are putting them through some kind of scientific treatment, extrapolating they're almost like cloning Vulcan brain matter, because what they want to do is take the telepathic abilities of the Vulcans and then put them into the Romulans, because Vulcans and Romulans have a common ancestor. The Vulcans ended up basically becoming touch empaths or touch telepaths, and Romulans did not. So what the Romulans want to do is kind of recode some of the genetic material, the DNA, in order to gain those powers so that they can have an upper hand, but not through doing it through knowledge and, following Serac and everything. Instead, they just want to use it for military purposes so they can manipulate and mind control. So she finds this out, and she essentially goes out into the neutral zone, sets it up so that she'll run into Kirk and get him to join her in a ruse, in a plan to take out the research facility inside Romulan space in order to destroy all of that. Of course, basically ostracizing herself from the Empire forever. It's actually a pretty good premise. Duane does give us a good variety of aliens in here, actually. It's not just humans and Romulans, but a lot of non-humanoid entities as well. We even get an ensign who's a Horta. And I'm not quite sure how. It seems like this would have only been like 2 or 3 years after The Devil in the Dark, when the Enterprise first ran across a Horta, and there's already one that apparently went through the Academy. That doesn't quite make sense, but it is kind of funny having like this silicone-based, rock life form going around and helping them out as well, that was kind of fun. We do end up having, I'm not going to get too spoilery with this, but I will say that they do end up joining forces, her Romulan crew, and of course the Enterprise, in order to try and take out this research facility. Now, the first third of this book did feel a little bit padded, although some of the things that felt padded that time did have some payoff towards the end. So I will give it that. The second half is when the crews come together. The second part. The third part really is when all the action takes place. And I will say that last third, there's some really good action. There's treachery. We've got space battles. We've got all kinds of gunfights going on. People teleporting bombs, and it ends up becoming quite fun. I do find, especially in a lot of the older Trek, I don't know if I've seen it as much in the newer Trek, a lot of the older Trek, they do tend to comment on, like, whenever a battle is happening, how almost like bloodthirsty the crew can become. Like, they get super excited that, like, they're basically in combat and they're taking people out, which always kind of struck me as kind of odd. Especially at the crew of the Enterprise reveling in the moment where they're blowing stuff up. It's like, dial it back a little bit. They don't need to be so gung-ho when it comes to ending life forms, I think. But otherwise, it just pops up quite a bit. I think that sometimes the writers get a little bit carried away with the action and how much fun they're having writing it versus what it would actually be like to experience people getting blown all over a Jeffries tube or something. I really overall enjoyed this. My main criticism, I guess, of this would be that when the crews do come together, there should have been far more tension. There should have been far more mistrust. We should have had open displays, maybe, of hostility. They do have a sort of convenient plot contrivance that does work. It's not bad for why they would trust this commander. So I understand why they trust the commander, but she has an entire crew. And it doesn't follow that just because they trust her, they would trust everybody on that ship. I think that there should have been way more tension between the Enterprise crew and the crew of, well, her ship is the Bloodwing. We do get kind of a sense, you can kind of, of course this is during the Cold War, this was written, and you do get kind of a sense when the Romulans come over and they see what life on the Enterprise is like and how diverse the population is and how much food is available to everybody, how much comfort there is inside the quarters. It does end up feeling a little bit kind of like, if a Soviet Russian had come to the United States and, toured, like one of them actually did, famously our grocery stores and stuff like that, and saw the comforts of capitalism. It does have a little bit of that flavor of the Romulans being a little bit like the Soviets in this, and the Federation being like capitalist United States. I did kind of get a sense of that. But yeah, there should have been more tension between the crew of both these ships. Instead, they kind of get along a little bit too well too quickly. Like they've always known each other, and like they're practicing out moves on each other, and throwing each other around. There's a lot of like winking and nods of just like, hey, I respect the way that you punched me that time. It gets a little bit weird at times, but I can kind of get over that. Now, the depiction of Romulan culture is kind of interesting because this is, like I said, 1984. This is when I believe The Search for Spock was coming out in theaters. This is 3 years before The Next Generation came out, which would end up fleshing out Romulan culture more. And even PICARD has done quite a bit to flesh out even more Romulan culture. So the way that they describe Romulans in this, they are devoted to, I wouldn't say worship, but they kind of have a religious reverence for the elements. And it kind of makes sense the way that it is put in here. You have a lot with Romulan houses, and honor is incredibly important, which does end up feeling way more like what we would see with the Klingons in The Next Generation. So a lot of what we think of in Romulans in this, I think would apply more to what Klingons would end up becoming in the series. Romulans, we find, have much more duplicity, mistrust, and I don't know, maybe this other book, which I just started barely a little while ago, maybe that'll go into some of that stuff. I did see in the first couple pages, it does acknowledge that Romulans were one of the few major races that had slaves. So I do see some slave culture in here, but you don't really get a sense of that in this. But otherwise, yeah, so some of it is basically discounted, obviously none of these are canon at all, but otherwise this was an overall good adventure. I had a good time with this, and I look forward to reading the next one. So those are just my thoughts. If you've read it, I'd love to hear what you think. I'm probably not going to have a video for a while because this week, as I'm filming, hopefully we'll be moving, and then it'll take some time to unbox things. So for the middle of August, I don't expect to be able to upload much as far as videos are concerned at all. I will be as active as I can still on BookTube, answering comments and all of that, but I probably won't be able to film very much until the end of the month. So I probably won't be getting around to talking about the Romulan Way for maybe almost 2 weeks, if I'm being optimistic for having everything unpacked in time and my schedule somehow opening up. But we will see. I don't know. But anyway, as always, I really hope that you are coming along with us on Book Trek, and thank you, BookTube.